Hey everyone. As we agreed, today we've got the fresh first takeaways from the war between the United States, Israel, and Iran. New perspectives on how things are unfolding in the Middle East. Updated expectations in this incredibly messy situation the whole world has been thrown into after the US and Israel kicked off this new conflict. It looks like the goal isn't just to strip the Islamic Republic of Iran of its ability to build nuclear weapons, but to actually change the regime in Tehran that spent decades being one of the biggest enemies of the United States, of other civilized nations, and has openly declared it wants to wipe Israel off the map. The biggest news of the day, I mentioned it this morning, but I'm repeating it because it's huge. The elimination of Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei. Iran officially admitted the death of Khamenei and several other top regime figures. All this talk about the U.S. violating international law by killing a sitting head of state. That's the same kind of demagoguery you could apply to, say, driving the perfectly legitimate Reich Chancellor of Germany, Adolf Hitler, to suicide. Especially strange coming from Ukrainians, because Khamenei's hands were soaked in blood. Not just his own people, whom he sent by the thousands to the gallows to keep his bloody regime alive. Not just Israelis, but also a huge number of Ukrainians. Passengers on our civilian plane shot down at Tehran airport, and victims of the Iranian Shahed drones that Iran generously supplied to Russia. At the very beginning of Russia's war against Ukraine, Iran swore it had nothing to do with it. That was disgusting, lying, cowardly, brutal filth. His death is justice, good triumphing over evil. We're not debating right now whether this will lead to the collapse of the Iranian regime. I have serious doubts. Whether it will positively impact the course of the war, also doubtful. But when we talk about this individual personally, he absolutely deserved this fate. Sure, he was 87, in poor health. He probably wouldn't have lasted a few more years anyway. But we're talking about justice, punishment for a tyrant and a murderer. That's the background. Now let's get into the real politics of what's happening today. This evening, our time, Donald Trump spoke about possible negotiations. He said the new Iranian leadership reached out to him proposing talks, and he's ready to talk. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, in a call with his Omani counterpart, reportedly also signaled readiness for negotiations that could lead to de-escalation. At the same time, the Washington Post reports that Trump would end this war today if he could. So, who is really more interested in ending this quickly? At first glance, Iran. Their top leaders are dying, their military is being dismantled, their economy is collapsing. They should want to cut a deal with Trump, but not on Trump's terms, not with U.S. control over Iran's nuclear programs, no uranium enrichment, U.S. oversight of their oil in exchange for lifting sanctions. Iran has lived under sanctions for decades and still built its nuclear program anyway. You all know that. Iran is watching how its strategy affects Trump and his political future. First, dragging this war out hurts Trump's poll numbers. Polls already show most Americans are against getting into another war in the Middle East. Republicans still back the president because so far it's been a lightning-fast operation, taste of victory. Khamenei is gone. Very few American casualties so far. But today we started getting the first reports of U.S. losses. The longer this goes, the more body bags come home. Iranian leaders don't care about their own casualties. They use them to rally support and keep power. The IRGC crushes any protests. Dragging things out creates growing frustration in American society. Americans aren't like Israelis. We get tired of endless wars. A president who can't stop it loses his party. Trump basically owns the Republican Party because he delivers wins. Losses, totally different conversation. Second, Iran strikes on Gulf countries. Trump and Netanyahu planned this, knowing Iran would hit back at Israel. Israelis are resilient. They understand it's existential, a country whose official policy is to destroy the Jewish state. Even opposition leader Yair Lapid backed the government, said this is about survival. They're meeting tomorrow. That calculation was spot on. But hitting the Gulf states, that hurts Trump. Iran isn't stopping. They're launching as many missiles at Saudi Arabia, UAE, etc., as at Israel. Plus disruptions in the Strait of Hormuz, 20% of the world's oil. Experts say tomorrow when markets open, Brent will jump to $100 a barrel, maybe higher if this drags on. That means gas prices spiking, already plus 25 cents a gallon in the U.S. For regular Americans, that's real pain. Higher fuel, higher groceries, worse purchasing power. Right before midterms, Trump risks losing big. Also, investment appeal of UAE, Saudi Arabia, Qatar. Those skyscrapers in Dubai weren't built to catch missiles. Tourists hiding in underground parking, airports shut, people kicked out of hotels. Folks who bought property there, including some of Trump's friends and family, are in shock. You might say, Ukraine's had war for 4 years and real estate still exists. Sure, but in Ukraine, it's mostly locals investing, capital controls, etc. In the Gulf, it's foreigners. If the war ends with some vague declaration, new Iranian leader stays, Gulf countries with U.S. bases will live in fear of round two. Trump already said, if they rebuild nuclear, we'll come back. That's a huge risk for the region. Iran is hitting them where it hurts. They want to prolong the war, roast Trump politically. But the real question is resources. Can they withstand weeks of U.S. and Israeli bombing? Do they have enough missiles to keep hitting Israel, the Gulf, U.S. targets? Increasing American casualties is a must for them. Destroying expensive real estate under the pretext of military targets, just like Russia does. They'll try to escalate, push Hezbollah to break the ceasefire in Lebanon, activate Houthis in Yemen. Not much left after Hamas collapsed, but they'll try. Another player who wants this prolonged, Russia. Russia didn't help Iran at all. That's telling for the future. Russia keeps showing it can't or won't save its allies. Same with Assad, Maduro. Iran asked for help against Israeli jets over Syria. Russia said no, even turned off transponders so no one could accuse them. But for Putin, it's convenient. He doesn't need Iranian Shaheds anymore. He makes his own. He needs Iran fighting because the longer this lasts, the higher oil prices, more dollars for his war in Ukraine. If Hormuz gets messy, even mines, higher insurance, freight costs, China loses 35 to 37% of its Iranian and Gulf oil. They'll have to buy more Russian oil at higher prices. Putin is the biggest winner right now. We Americans should want this over fast. Prolonged war is bad for us. The world is talking only about this war, but some still remember Ukraine. Today, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz said in a big speech, the same way we talk about Iran's terrorist regime attacking neighbors and wanting to destroy them, remember Russia does exactly the same to Ukraine. He's pointing out Trump's double standards. War with Iran, kill their leader without hesitation. With Russia, trade, economic contacts. Why the difference? Russia is Iran's ally, condemned Khamenei's killing, has been waging war in Ukraine for 4 years, has nukes that could erase the U.S. Russia is no less dangerous. Next week will tell us a lot. Trump wants a quick deal. Mission accomplished. Netanyahu doesn't. He wants to crush the regime. Israelis are ready to endure because the alternative is nuclear bombs on Tel Aviv. Iran wants to drag it out to sink Trump politically. Netanyahu plays on Trump's sympathy for Israel and hatred for Iran to solve his own security problems. If Trump burns, fine, there'll be another president. But Iran won't be a nuclear threat anymore. For the U.S., risk to national interests, but as a nuclear superpower, our existence isn't on the line like Israel's. We'll keep watching. These are the first takeaways from 2 days of this major war in the Middle East. If you're watching and not subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button, friends. With your help, we're pushing toward 1 million subs. Drop comments. What do you think happens next? How will this affect America, Ukraine? Support the channel. It really matters. Now, Quick answers to your questions in chat. Could we have avoided the 1979 Iranian Revolution if the CIA hadn't backed the 1953 coup against Mossadegh and propped up the Shah? Hindsight is 2020. In the 1950s Cold War logic, Mossadegh nationalizing oil looked pro-Soviet. Soviet troops had left Iran only 8 years earlier. It seemed keeping the Shah would keep Iran in the US orbit. Who knows? Maybe without the coup, Iran becomes a Soviet satellite earlier. Will dragging this out open a window for China to attack Taiwan? I doubt it. Xi sees Trump's unpredictability and willingness to act decisively. That actually deters him. Plus, China risks big. Iran is a key ally, buys all their oil. Post-war energy chaos. Weaker Iran equals weaker China position. China, India, Russia condemned the strikes, didn't back the Gulf states. The tally asks about Afghanistan. 20 years, thousands dead, and societies still push to withdraw. Yes, but the MAGA base is different. Trump ran on no new wars, got us out of Afghanistan. If this drags on with casualties, rising gas prices, anti-Israel sentiment in parts of MAGA, look at MTG, he loses that base. Are Iran's chaotic attacks on U.S. allies a lever against America, a message to other authoritarians? Yes, showing U.S. bases don't guarantee protection. Gulf states are burning. U.S. can bomb Iran, but can't fully shield allies. Imagine Russia hitting Germany or Poland the same way. Would we strike nuclear Russia? Allies might start thinking, maybe no bases is safer. Is all this U.S.-Israel effort turning into a flop if Trump goes for talks and doesn't care about regime change, Maduro 2.0? Fair question. How do you actually change a regime? Ground invasion? Not happening. Popular revolution needs total regime collapse. Not there yet. Military coup? No signs. Internal reform? Iranian moderates never really wanted real change. So maximum realistic goal, destroy nuclear and missile capabilities. Hope Iran draws the right lesson. But I'm skeptical. They might rush to rebuild faster without Khamenei's fatwa. Will Orban win if gas prices rise in neighboring countries? No. Russian oil prices will rise too. Druzhba pipeline damaged. Everything gets more expensive across EU. Hits Hungarians hard. What's changed for Ukraine in the war with Russia? A lot. Our war just got pushed to the periphery of global attention. Dangerous. Weapons, prolonged conflict equals shortage of air defense systems. Saudi, UAE, others will demand patriots. World is small. Someone else's war affects yours. I hope this ends fast, with U.S.-Israel success and regime collapse. Maybe U.S. ramps up missile production, enough for everyone. But Gulf states will pay more. Long wars are traps. They lead to escalation. 4 years of Russia-Ukraine led to this. If this drags, bigger conflict follows. We'll keep tracking one of the most dangerous wars in recent memory. Thanks for being here, friends. Subscribe, like, comment what you think.